Welcome to Parsha Azanu, Ha'azanu. And we start with merging of heavens and earth, which is really just how Moshe actually starts. L'shem yikud kudusha brihu ushinate bi'ilu imu laihad shem yuki bevavke biuda shalom Hashem kozriel kolam. Amen. This is near the end of the Torah. Moses is on his last day, and he's really giving, at this point, a teaching, a warning, and a prophecy simultaneously. And he's doing it with song, which is beautiful. Song has a certain power. When we talk individually, we don't necessarily listen to each other, but when we sing collectively, we become one. That's the power of song. And song activates the song of your own heart. So he's singing his song to the people. I'm going to comment about song a little bit because I think it's important for us to really get the meaning of it here. So, songs, when we think biblically, and we're thinking there's 10 songs. 10 songs. Okay, so one of the songs was of the crossing after they crossed the Dead Sea. The second song, well, the next song is the song of the singing out before they enter the land. So the role of song is very, very important. Shanti and I have actually created our own song for our move to Israel in the same way. So song, the expression of your heart, is what Moses is really sharing with the people. So that's the context, okay? Here's the teaching. Pay attention, please. As he say, please listen. Ha'azanu. Please listen here. And his teaching are so direct, I'm going to just take them right somewhat out of the Torah because it's so prophetic and so amazingly shamanically correct. For now, not just 3,300 years ago, for now. He says, give ear, O heavens, and I will speak. Hear, O earth. So he's calling upon the heavens and earth as a witness, but it's the force, it's very much a shamanic statement. And then he talks about his teaching. My doctrine will drop as the rain. Okay, that's the heavens coming down. And my speech shall distill as the dew, the earth coming up. So in the Kabbalistic teachings, we really have two ways that we begin to experience the divine. One is the coming down, Yeshurun, and then the rising up, okay? And those are the two directions. Now, until the time of Abraham, it was only coming down, okay? At the time of Abraham, he activated the rising up, the role of humanity in reaching up to God, activating the downward forces. And that's a very key principle that Abraham activated. So we always have the cosmic forces coming down. Abraham activates by our life, by our prayer, the activating the forces going up to activate the downward flow. That's hugely important in the overall, really Torah and I'm going to say Kabbalistic teachings, is we play an active role in invoking the downward flowing forces of God. Okay, so that's what he's doing right here. He's invoking both. It's like, oh, wow. And then he says, first thing you got to remember, now these are my words, right, is call upon the name of Hashem. That's the first thing you got to remember of the whole thing, okay? And in calling upon the name, I ascribe greatness to Hashem. So he's telling the people, don't forget, this is the number one thing. There's only God, and we ascribe greatness to God. Okay, that wow. And then he talks about the qualities. Hashem is the rock. Rock of salvation, we call it, but the rock, the center point on which we stand. His work is perfect. For all his ways are justice. So we see in the world today, oh, I don't like the way this is. Oh, it's unfair, it's unjust. No. If we understand anything about the forces, midad, keneged midad, the laws of karma, everything is perfect. It may not feel fair, but there is nothing that's unfair. To think something's unfair is to be a very inexperienced consciousness on the planet. Everything that happens to us is fair, is just, and is actually creating healing. Laws of karma that are, I won't call it common sense, but are known in every tradition. So that's what justice is about. Not our ideas of justice. It's a cosmic flow, and we don't really necessarily understand. That's the key. So, he makes it very clear. His ways are just. Hashem's ways are just. Hashem is the God of truth. And all he's saying is understand that, and you'll understand how to live going into the future, as well as in the present. Profound advice. We really, as our world unfolds today, it's like, whoa, but it's all just. That's the thing we gotta get. In our common language, it's all the fulfillment of a karma, individual, family, and world karma. So that's what is the key perspective of how to look what's going on. Okay, and then he says, Hashem, I'm always taking care of you. He says, like an eagle stirs up in her nest, broods over her young, spreads abroad her wings, takes them, bears them upon her pinions. So Hashem will lead us. So he lays out, that's the way it works. Those are the cosmic play. And if you get that, life is going to be pretty good because you know to trust in God. And that's the key. But then he says, you folks are going to get successful. You're going to be like a fat cow. Okay? And you will grow fat and become thick in your, he didn't say thick in your consciousness, you'll become thick. And the result of becoming thick and fat, and he says it a few times, okay, is you will forsake God. He lays it out. And we can see exactly that's what's happening today. People are focused on, not on God, they're focused on power. They're focused on the illusion of their belief on what we call social justice, which is just a subjective belief. They're focused on wealth, materialism, and theories of how things should be, which have never worked out if we really understand anything about the theories that have created millions of deaths. I'm not going to get into the details of that, but okay, social political theories that have resulted in complete serious disaster for millions of people. And he says, don't forsake God. You don't have to go through this. You don't have to go through this. And then he talks about strange gods. And if we know very blatantly, that's also what's happening today. We have forces in America, for example, that are literally invoking evil spirits, strange gods, as part of their work with the dark side. Literally doing this. So it's a part of what they're saying. They've provoked him to jealousy with strange gods. and with abominations they provoked him. If you look around, look how people are treating each other. It just, even on the videos, I was shocked to see parents literally holding their kids, whether they're 2 or 4, and then just tossing them away and start twerking or whatever it is. I'm not sure what twerking is actually, but they start dancing and kind of in suggestive ways, and it's like, you just threw your kid away across the room, your 6-month-old, your 2-year-old. That's an abomination, okay? And we can talk about, honoring pedophilia as if it's a good thing, and we can talk about child sacrifice. These are abominations. This is what we're talking about. It's not some fairy tale, okay? Strange gods, abominations. And it comes from forgetting God. So we're seeing it all play out today, the chaos that we're seeing. But we need to remember, God's holiness reigns over the chaos. Just think about that for a moment. So this is actually, in a sense, a bigger picture as a wake-up call. Okay, it's not the end. It's not reality in the sense of the bigger picture. It's the wake-up call. And Hashem tells them, okay, if you don't follow my way, the ways of the Torah, I've made it really clear, you're going to get kicked out of the land. Exactly what happens. Now Moses is telling people this, okay, and people do get kicked out. And then it's several thousand years later when they get their return, which is a miracle in itself. So in starting in, let's say, 1867, people begin to come back. Israel begins to come back into the land. 1917, we have the British honoring the return to the land. And in the 1940s, obviously 1947, 48, Israel becomes a state. 1967, the Six-Day War, more returning to the land. And finally, here we are, 2017, the next 50-year cycle. So there's been a steady return to the land and a rebuilding up the land from being a complete desert. When Mark Twain was there in 1867, it was just, he describes it as a complete desert. And now the desert blooms. Didn't have my accent. This is what we're talking about. The desert blooms. And people are becoming fruitful. So everything that Moses talks about, prophesizes, is coming true. And truly, just the fact that there was a real return and creation of a nation after 2,000 years, that has never happened before. So people are given that second chance to return. And that's the good news. So we have the options, not so bad. And what he describes as things get bad, they shall be suckered empty by hunger. And we're seeing amazing amount of hunger today. We do so much work trying to feed people. Native American tribes here, at least 14 in Arizona alone. We have now started, we have over, in our humanitarian work, Tree of Life Foundation, we have over 50 farms in Cameroon, 20 farms in Liberia, and it's going to expand. And we dig wells so people have water. Okay, so it's a return. But all these things have happened. Emptied by hunger, devoured with burning heat. Oh, well, isn't that interesting? As we look at California, Oregon, and Washington burning. Oh, it's all there. And with bitter destruction. Well, we look at least 48 out of the 50 main cities, and there's more cities than that, that are having destruction happening. All prophesized. It's like people are playing out prophecies. Now that probably doesn't make them too happy to think that they're playing out the prophecies of God and of the Torah, since it's an anti-God movement, but that's the way it is. And then, at the end of the story, which is what we're talking about now, He says, Hashem will avenge the blood of his servants. That's all the blood of all the people who have followed God, who have been killed, and will render vengeance to his adversaries. Okay? We're looking at the dark forces. They think they're on top of the game now. It's not the way it's going to end up. And we need to have faith. The way it's going to end up is light will prevail, and love will prevail, and peace will prevail. Not slavery and destruction and domination by the few of the many. And he will forgive the land and the people. It's beautiful. It's exactly what's going on. So, he says, but what do you have to do? Well, there is a solution. What do you have to do to make this happen? Well, grace is a part of it. Return to land is part of it. And what he says is, observe and do all the words of the Torah. It's not a vain thing for you, it says, but it is your life. So return to holiness. Return to a holy way of life. Return to the 10 speakings. And through following the word, okay, you should prolong your days in the land. Now, that's pretty straightforward. It's like we are living that prophecy, and that's the beauty of it. What's the message here? Well, I have one more thing before I say that. This is Moshe's last day. He's given the final teachings to help people make it for the next few thousand years. Okay, we're seeing it all happen now. And then he's told by Hashem that he goes up to Mount Nebo, where he's to leave his body and then buried in some in the valley there, and nobody knows where his tomb is. And people say, well, why don't we know? Well, it's because people would make it into an idol. Okay, so it has to be unavailable. And then he merges with God. We call it the divine kiss. So where does this all go? The whole picture is laid out for us. Now, we don't have to go through this. We don't have to keep going through this. If we're able to go back to the natural ways of living that take us to God, following the way of the Torah, life becomes not easy, but it brings us to peace, it brings us to harmony, it brings us to love, it brings us to oneness. And that's the key. We have the opportunity now to sing a new song. We have the opportunity to not create a new reality, but align ourselves with the reality that we've been promised. And all we need to do is return to the natural way of living, which I have made simple when I talk about the 6 foundations in sevenfold peace. But the natural way of living, as outlined by the Torah, that brings us to the awareness of the divine. So may everyone begin to sing a new song for yourself. A new song of love and hope and of light and of peace. And as we sing that new song in this world, the world will wake up. There are 2 final songs that need to be said. One is when Am Israel finally gets what Moses is talking to them, is share it, which hasn't happened yet. And the final song, after Am Israel wakes up and shares this, is all humanity understanding our oneness, understanding that we are a unified field of God consciousness, and begins to live in that oneness and that light and that love. That's the final song that will be sung here. And may we all be blessed that we're able in our lifetimes to sing that song. Shalom, shalom, shalom. Amen.